Hey friends, Donovan here with Ernie Williamson Music and Trumpet Thoughts. Just mentioned in a recent video about this idea of a natural player and just thought I'd kind of share my thoughts on it real quick. So I think many of us have if you've had any experience at all in the trumpet world, especially getting into adulthood and heard, world-class players talk about their backgrounds. We've all heard that, like, and seen just these, players that had tremendous abilities going back to early ages, middle school, high school. Wayne Bergeron's famous for that. John Faddis, Doc Severinsen, Maynard Ferguson. Like, you could just sort of like rattle off this, kind of our who's who of trumpet heroes. Most of those people, were a natural at the trumpet. And I think there's two things at play here, and I think that's general aptitude, and then I think the other is just luck. So let's talk about the aptitude. Certainly, I think there's some small amount of correspondence between someone who just has the right physiological setup to help them be successful. But I think sometimes old timers will think like, oh, he's got the right lip for it, or, he's got big lungs or whatever. Man, I don't know. There might be a right setup physiologically for that, but I haven't really been able to quite identify it. And I think as long as you don't have any major problems, and I think those major problems would essentially be to do primarily with your teeth. I think as long as you don't have that, I just don't know there's much physiological difference, because we can, you can look at Doc Severinsen's chops and you can look at John Faddis's chops, and they don't look the same. They get that different teeth and lip structure, and it's quite a bit different. So I don't know that like you can call out like, lip shape or anything like that being a key indicator. What I will say is the teeth thing's kind of important. And I think with our teeth, what you don't want is on these teeth that are going to be underneath the rim of the mouthpiece, you really don't want like either a super flat junction like that, because if it's super flat, then when the mouthpiece presses against it, it can just squeeze like all the blood out, and there's no way to keep it circulating, and then it ends up just going numb and stiff too quick if it's like super like buck teeth type flat. And then the other problem is if it's like super, like if you've got a super sharp point like right in there that's like making it where you're cutting, that one you can fix though by either moving the mouthpiece position so it's away from that cutting point, or maybe even like having your teeth kind of reshaped a little bit. But beyond that, obviously a lot of players play super successful if they got a big gap between their teeth. I know, like, for a lot of them, like Cat Anderson, John Faddis, a lot of those guys, they've got that gap that helps them a lot. There's other folks that don't have a big gap and they still play well, so I don't know that matters. I do think with your teeth, essentially, most people, you need some kind of like high point, some kind of like little bit of angle that you're sort of working against. You're kind of leveraging with it, kind of like you would a fulcrum. It doesn't have to be that sharp necessarily, but you just need a little bit of an angle that you're kind of working on. That seems to be consistent. So super flat or super pointy is a problem. But physiologically, I think as long as you've got reasonable lung capacity and everything else, I don't know that there's much else to it that way. What is more important, though, is how you approach the instrument with these lips and tongue and everything else. And I just think it's just a luck of the draw that there's some players like Wayne Bergeron, for example, because Wayne shared that, like, he's played high notes since he was in middle school, and Maynard, same thing. Like, I think those guys just sort of, the way they picked up the horn and tried to play it the first time was the optimal way, and then because it was optimal, like, there was positive results immediately. And then they just kept doing more of that. Like, they just kind of snowballed on itself because the way they tried it was the right and most efficient and effective way. And they just kept doing that. And pretty quickly, within a matter of literally just a few years, they had great registers and endurance and stuff like that. And then as they got older, like Wayne has shared quite a bit, as he's gotten older, he's just become more efficient at what he does. And he's often said, the 60-year-old Wayne Bergeron could bury the 20-year-old Wayne Bergeron just because he's so much more efficient and knowledgeable about what he's doing. And I totally believe that. But I don't know that it's like that Wayne has this certain gift. And you know, Bobby Shue shared with me that he really felt like the idea of talent was like really overblown. Like, what is talent? Like, that doesn't even mean anything. Like, but I think there's just some people that were lucky and that the way that they initially tried to play the instrument was the right way, and they never had to unlearn a lot of other bad habits. And so that's kind of my thoughts on it. So what does that mean for you? Well, I guess if you didn't ever try it the right way first time, you're probably screwed. Okay, not exactly, but maybe a little bit. No, I think if you didn't try it, if you didn't get it right on your first try, you're probably welcome to the club. That's how most trumpet players are. But second, I think that means you got to try something else. So if you're at a spot where you feel like you're in a rut and like, God dang it, I've been playing this thing for years and I'm just not making any headway, I'm not doing anything, then you need to try something different. And in my experience, when I get on the right track of something, I notice, and there's something almost usually immediately, like in that session, that practice session, there's usually something. I'm like, ooh, that was easier. And then you kind of chase that thing down and see if there's something to that. And that's honestly probably what this whole channel is about. You know, trying something new and different, see if it has merit and worth, and then testing it like you're in a laboratory and seeing if it holds up under further testing and the crucible of live performance. Like, that's really what it comes down to. So, and I think if you don't try new approaches, and you're also frustrated with your playing, then I think you're just doomed to, you know, be stuck in the spot that you're in. So obviously, if you play wonderfully and you have no, you know, criticisms against your playing or frustrations, then you don't need to change anything. And you probably not even, why would you even be watching this video? So I don't think that's any of my audience. But if you are like hitting a wall or having frustrations, you've got to try something different. In my experience, I think most people that have had private instruction and stuff like that, I think most of the advice that you'll find online just doesn't tend to work. So we tend to hear a lot of things about airflow and compression and stuff like that. Man, my experience, a lot of that just doesn't work. So it's not that it's not true, but for some reason the advice doesn't take hold. And I think on average, if you're an adult age trumpet player, and have been playing for several years, you are probably breathing just fine. If anything, you're probably over breathing. You're probably blowing too hard. You're probably using too much air. And I think that's often the most, you know, common advice you get when people talk about playing troubles. You know, they're told to use more air, and they're told to play long tones and lip slurs, and man, that crap just doesn't work. Those are people they're well-meaning, but they don't know what they're talking about. So try a different approach. And for me, I find often a lot with that the tongue and the embouchure, really, the closer you get to what's happening right here at this intersection between your body and the horn, which is basically the mouthpiece, that is super critical. Not to say that, you know, the rest of your breathing apparatus and stuff isn't important, but man, from the tip of the tongue and the lips and here, that's where the magic happens. That's where the magic happens. That's been my experience, at least. What do you think about this? Let me know your thoughts. You think that I'm on the right track with this or no? Tell me.